Okay, seeing that it is 4:05, we will get started. So hi everyone, we are Ignite Science and we're so excited to welcome you to our STEM panel here today. We have 5 amazing guest speakers joining us who will be speaking about their journeys in STEM.
Yeah, so some housekeeping rules. We are recording this event where we've already started recording, so please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off. And if you have any questions, you can type them into the general chat and we will answer them during our Q&A period.
Yeah, please avoid sending your questions directly to the panelists just because they will be answering questions during the Q&A period. So this is our general schedule. We will be doing introductions till about 4:10. And then from 4:10 to 5 o'clock, we will be having our speaker presentations with about 10 minutes for each speaker. We will be hosting a Q&A session till about 5:50, and then we will be having our raffle draw at 5:50. So we'd like to quickly thank our sponsors and partners.
So our first sponsor is MD Consultants. They're a company that offers customized advice to students who are seeking admission to healthcare-related professional programs in Canada, in the US, and internationally. So basically, what they do is they provide one-on-one sessions with med students and professionals in that area. So they're also offering 10% off to their services to everyone here. So you just have to mention Ignite Science when you're registering, and that's their website.
We would also like to shout out one of our sponsors, Operation Med School Calgary. They are a youth-led organization who are currently hosting a webinar series on the topic of careers in medicine. This webinar series is currently continuing into March, so you can purchase their tickets at their website, which has been provided below. So with that being said, we'll let our amazing speakers introduce themselves, starting with Yavani. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. My name is Yavani, and I'm a final year medical student at the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah, it's super nice to meet you. Nikola, would you like to introduce yourself?
You're muted.
Thank you for that. Thanks again for having me here tonight. My name is Nikola. I am a recruitment officer at the University of Toronto with a specific focus with our engineering faculty. So tonight I'm just going to talk a little bit about our programs, what we have to offer, and of course answer any questions you may have as
well. Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. Nina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So hi, my name's Nina. I'm a teenager who's really interested in longevity and aging and basically preventing aging-related diseases from happening, like dementias, Parkinson's, and that kind of stuff. I've done some work with that in the past, and currently I'm working on a company to actually give more information about your state of health and your aging process. And yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming today, Nina. Tiffany, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I'm mostly known in the public as running the Instagram account at Arguing for Medicine. I am a non-traditional pre-med student here in the United States. I'm on the first of 2 gap years, and I'm actually about to apply to medical school within the next 2.5 months. So exciting. I primarily focus on talking about the political intersections with healthcare. How can we make patients more informed about their healthcare choices and understanding what goes on in health beyond the bacterial or viral pathways that we may all know to be medicine. I'm super excited to be here and can't wait to hear everyone's questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. And our final panelist is Audrey, but she does have a class right now, so she will be coming later in the later during the event. So with that being said, we can get started with Yavani's presentation. So Yavani, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Perfect. I'm just gonna.
And yeah, just as a note, Yavani will not be able to stay for the Q&A period due to some time zone issues. So if you guys have any questions for her, she will be providing her email, and you can reach out to her with them afterwards. So you can share your presentation and get started.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can you see my presentation?
Yep, looks good.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and thank you, STEM, for having me today. It's a pleasure to talk to you all. I actually just finished one of my first big final year exams this past Wednesday, so I'm really excited to talk to you all about my experience. So just an outline for this evening, it's kind of geared towards my educational journey and background on how I transitioned from high school to medical school, as well as my journey through medical school. And then I'll briefly touch on the residency application process for applying to pediatrics in North America. So just a bit about me. So I'm a final year medical student at the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, Ireland, but I actually grew up in Toronto, but I'm not actually from Toronto, but people usually say Toronto, but I'm actually from Markham. I attended high school at Holy Trinity School in Richmond Hill. I'll talk a bit more about that, about my high school experience in a second. And then I decided to travel across the ocean to Dublin to study medicine directly out of high school at RCSI, which I'll also talk later in my presentation. So let's talk about my high school experience. So what led me to applying to medical school and the actual application process to applying to medical school. So in high school, I was always drawn to the science fields, biology, chemistry, physics, but my favorite course was kinesiology. I just love learning about the human body, the mechanics behind it, and how it impacted our health and well-being. I also knew early on that I wanted to work in the medical field, and I wasn't exactly sure what career in that field until I started like shadowing and observing different doctors in their clinic, that I actually knew that I wanted to become a doctor as well. So I think it was at the end of grade 10 that I had the idea that I wanted to become a doctor. So I catered all my grade 11 and grade 12 courses to apply to an undergraduate pre-medical university programs in Ontario. For example, I applied to medical science, med-sci, and kinesiology at Western, and life sciences at Queen's and U of T. And then I also applied to medical schools in Ireland. So I essentially had two plans following graduating high school. So the first one was either I was going to do an undergrad degree in pre-medical science program for 4 years, then take the MCAT, and then apply to medical school in Canada or the US. Or my second option was if I got accepted to medical school in Ireland, then I would take like that big chance of leaving home so young and to attend medical school. And at that time, I knew that I really wanted to become a doctor, so I was willing to take that chance to go straight into med school. And I also have had family members to go into medical school in Ireland as well, so it was comforting to know that it was possible and is doable to go straight from high school directly into med school. So the application process. So the process of applying to medical school directly from high school is very much different than if you were to apply after doing an undergrad degree and then taking the MCAT. So there are many medical schools that students apply directly from high school, such as in the Caribbean, the UK, or Ireland. But I chose Ireland specifically because of previous family members have gone to my school, and the application process was slightly easier than if I were to apply to the UK. So let's talk briefly about the application process to Ireland specifically. So there's 6 medical schools in Ireland that you can apply to. So the first is the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. So that's the one that I'm at. And so fun fact, like my school, there's about 25% of us are like an international population from North America. So you wouldn't, like coming here is kind of nice because you know people from like Canada and the US as well. Then the second one is Trinity College Dublin, the third University College Dublin, fourth is University College Cork, fifth National University Ireland Galway, and the final one is University of Limerick. The application process is done through one portal system called the Atlantic Bridge. Just a side note, Atlantic Bridge is a great website and a useful tool for all things related to applying for medicine. So if you're interested in all, I'd definitely check it out. The website link is www.atlanticbridge.com. So the entire process of applying to medical school is relatively easy and straightforward, since you create one application that is seen by all 6 universities, rather than here in Canada where sometimes you have to apply to you have to make multiple applications for each university program. And additionally, there are no entrance exams required to apply to med schools in Ireland, whereas in the UK, you have to take the UK CAT as part of your application to med school. So once you create and submit your application, it is then released to all the 6 medical schools. And then based on if the medical school likes your application, they then invite you for an interview. And it's so funny because I still remember the day I got my interview invitation email from this medical school. And I was in biology class with my 2 other friends who applied as well. And we all got the email at the same time. And we all got so excited. And then fast forward now, like 6 years later, and I'm like less than 2 months from graduating, becoming a doctor, and like we can't really believe like how like fast the time has gone by. So a bit about like the Irish medical schools and systems. So which also leaned me towards going to medical school after high school instead of doing the 4-year degree, is that the entire program is 6 years of schooling, whereas in Canada and the US it would be 8, so like 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of med school. And then following the 6 years of medical school, we are awarded 3 degrees. So Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, and then Bachelor of Obstetrics, which all 3 degrees are equivalent to an MD, which is awarded in the US or Canada. And that's a picture of the Atlantic Bridge website that I was talking about. And so medical school. So medical school for me has flown by so quickly. I'm in my 6th and final year now, and I can honestly say that it's been a journey that I'll never forget. I'm sure you guys have heard that medical school is tough, and like, don't get me wrong, it definitely is. But I truly believe like if you have a good balance of studying and doing activities that you enjoy, plus a great support system to help you along the way, like med school is definitely doable and your goals can be achieved. So in terms of my medical school specifically and how the curriculum's set up, it goes as follows. So year 0, so we call it foundation year, or the first year you enter. You learn very basic clinical sciences, or as we like to call it, 4 years of undergrad squished into 1 year. And this year it was kind of interesting because I learned about physics of like gunshot wounds, or like how MRI machines worked, which was really interesting. And then year 1 to 3 is the preclinical science years. So I learned about the different human systems, so like the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, along with like the pathology and mechanisms behind like different diseases. And then year 4 and 5 are the clinical years, where you go into the hospitals like around Ireland, learning alongside doctors and residents in each of your core rotations, for example, pediatrics, family medicine, obstetrics, and gynecology and psychiatry. But outside of studying, I truly believe like extracurriculars are so important in maintaining a healthy and balanced lifestyle in med school. So I took on a few leadership roles during med school, such as the women's varsity basketball captain, and I started my first ever competition dance team here at my school. I also have an interest in research, which led me to conduct a literature review and develop an audit to investigate the management protocols for rheumatic fever and post-streptococcal reactive arthritis. So next steps for me for being in final year. So I'm currently in the process of applying to residency in both Canada and the US for pediatrics. Since I do study abroad, I'm considered an international medical graduate, and we do have to take board exams to be eligible to practice back in Canada and the US prior to applying for residency. For Canada, that would be the QE1, and for the US, that would be step 1 and step 2 CK. So why did I decide to specialize in pediatrics? So I've always been drawn to working with children through various work and volunteer experiences. And I was a swim instructor and a lifeguard, as well as a dance teacher growing up. So I also love youth education and development, and became interested in that aspect when I worked as at an after school program with grades 5 and 6 students. And I helped them with math, reading, and writing, and promoting healthy lifestyle. So that kind of just drew me to the specialty itself. And it was interesting because when I was actually on my pediatrics rotation here, like last year, one of the doctors, like our attendings, was talking to us, and he asked us like this question. He was like, if you were paged at midnight one day, would you wake up to treat a child or like an adult? And obviously you would wake up for both, but he's like, what would spark your interest more? Which child would make you like come and like help them? And that just really sparked my interest in wanting to become a pediatrician. So that's me. Thank you for listening to my talk, and it's been great talking to you about my experience throughout med school. And if you have any questions, I left my email and my social media and my LinkedIn there, so please feel free to shoot me an email or message me, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting. Medical school in Ireland sounds really interesting. Thanks for sharing your experience. Our next speaker is Nikola, who's going to be talking about engineering and applied sciences at U of T.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope I'm not muted this time. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'll go ahead and get started. All right. I just want to make sure that everyone can see the slide.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for having me tonight. Thank you so much for joining us tonight as well. So as I mentioned, my name is Nikola. I am a recruitment officer at the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering at U of T. Today's presentation really is kind of just a quick overview of 3 key topics that we're gonna look into. The first one is our experiential learning opportunities. The second one is our general academics at U of T Engineering. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about the community at U of T Engineering as well. Now, before we begin any presentation, we always think it's really important to acknowledge the land on which U of T operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to both work and learn on this land. So as I mentioned, experiential learning opportunities, academics, community, and we will close off with just general admissions and finance information, just to kind of give you an idea of what to expect and what the application process looks like. Now, at U of T Engineering, we kind of have this lens that we look at everything that we do, and we call it engineering for the world. And the reason we call that, and the reason we approach it in that way, is that engineering really is a profession that serves all of humanity. It's not just about making a positive impact in your life or the life of the people around you, but as an engineer, you take on that profession to make a positive impact in pretty much all the lives of anyone who comes into contact with the work that you're doing. And that's really, how we structure our studies and what we push for our students to think about every time they do an assignment, every time they, go into a co-op opportunity, whatever it might be. The notion that, you're doing this for more than just yourself, you're doing this for, the globe at the end of the day. One of the ways these opportunities and this approach to engineering for the world manifest is in our experiential learning opportunities. Now, we have a bunch of different ways to take on these learning opportunities. And what I mean by experiential learning opportunities is simply education you get outside of the classroom, learning experiences you get outside of the classroom. For the purpose of today's session, since we don't have too much time, I do want to focus on our professional experience here, also known as our co-op program, and just really talk about what that program has to offer and what students get out of it. Now, first and foremost, our PEY, as we like to call it, PEY for professional experience here, our co-op program is completely optional. So it's not a mandatory program. Students don't need to enroll in it, but it is a way for you to get up to 20 months of work experience before you graduate from your 4 years of study. Now, these 20 months manifest in 2 specific ways. The first is a 4-month kind of summer internship program that happens in between your 2nd and your 3rd year of study. But then the bulk of your experience, the 12 to 16 months, takes place in between your 3rd and your 4th year. So that's really where you not only get a better idea of what it looks like to work in the real world, but really where you get to really enhance your learning experience and contribute to the work that's being done. The purpose of that 12 to 60 months, we think, is that, again, students can actually contribute to the work that's being done and leave a positive impact at the company that they're at. We keep hearing testimonials from our students that is not just building blocks. It's not just, I get to learn about the industry, I get to meet a team, I get to see what it might look like. But students continue to talk about, the leadership roles they've taken, the work they've done, the initiatives they started, all these little things that really help you grow, not just in the business side of things, but as a person as well. And that's something that we really continue to push for and continue to take pride in when it comes to our co-op program. Every year, there's about 1,900 jobs available across various sectors, and every single one of the positions for our co-op program is completely paid. So the average salary last year was 51,000 Canadian dollars, with many students actually making far more than that as well. Year over year, we have about a 90% intake from our first year students. So 90% of our first year students do sign up for this program. And again, it is just a testament to how successful it is and how positive of an impact it has on our students. This is Kimberly. Kimberly was one of our co-op students. She worked at Saffron Landing Systems, which is an airplane company. She worked with, I think, the landing gear when it comes to airplanes. And the latter part of her quote is really what resonates with me and with really anyone that I talk to about her experiences. She says, "I truly felt like part of the team and that my inputs and opinions were valued." And that's again where those 12 to 16 months come into play. It's not just the building blocks and learning the ropes, but actually having an opinion, having inputs that are successful and that are valued in that work that you do. Just quickly, we do partner with over 360 different companies all around the globe. So there are both international and domestic opportunities for our students. And as you can see, it's not just one realm that students have the opportunity to work at. You can see the tech industry, you can see automotive, banking, healthcare, finance, really whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're interested in, we want those opportunities to be available to you. And at the end of the day, those opportunities are available to you. So we have a whole team dedicated to help you, work on your resume, work on your interview skills, help you apply to all these companies, and really, progress towards a first-year student to a successful third-year student going into your, your first major work experience. Shifting gears a little bit, I do think it's really important to talk about the academics and kind of in-classroom experiences that you can expect at U of T. So specific again to U of T engineering, we have 10 programs with 2 curricular pathways associated with them. We have our core programs and we have our engineering science program. Now we'll talk a little bit more about both and starting with our core programs. Now our core programs really represent those traditional areas of engineering. When you think of engineering, you probably think of civil engineering, computer engineering, industrial engineering, really those types of topics. And that's really where our core programs come into play. So if you're, sitting at home, you're in grade 10, you're in grade 11, whatever it might be, and you know exactly what you want to do. Since I was 12 years old, I wanted to be a civil engineer. I wanted to work with buildings, with bridges, whatever it might be. And that's really what my passion is. In grade 12, you can apply directly to civil engineering and structure your 4 years of study around that specific topic. Same thing goes with any of the other core 8 programs. If you know what you're passionate about, you can apply directly into any single one of those core 8 programs. Now, if you are like a lot of students and know that you're interested in STEM, you like your engineering, you like math, but you just wish you had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the programs we have to offer before you make an actual decision, that's where our Track 1 program comes into play. Now, Track 1 is better known as our undeclared first-year program. The great thing with the core programs at U of T is that no matter what program, if you're in any of the core 8 programs or Track 1, first year is very, very similar for all students. It's really that foundation year, building blocks, and really getting you comfortable with what's to come in your second, third, and fourth year. And so where Track 1 differs, however, is that it offers an additional seminar course that sheds light and talks about all of the other core 8 programs. And the purpose of that course is that at the end of first year, when you're finishing your Track 1 studies, going into second year, you get automatic access to any one of the core 8 programs as long as you're in good academic standing. So that seminar course sheds light on all the core 8 programs. We bring in people from all the faculties, they talk to our students and they give them a better idea of what to expect, the work, the jobs, the opportunities available. And then for those Track 1 students, at the end of first year, they enroll into one of these core 8 programs to continue their future years. The second pathway is our engineering science programs, which is completely separate from our core 8 programs. Engineering science is broken down in a 2+2 year approach, where the first 2 years are foundation years. So it's really, rigorous and really academically focused to get you prepped and ready for your engineering science majors, which you choose in years 3 and 4. And the really cool thing about the engineering science program, it is, as I mentioned, really academically rigorous and one of the few program of its kind really around the globe. But the cool thing about it is that not only does it have in-class and practical experiences, but it also has a research approach and a research background as well. So a lot of the students, or all of our students in our engineering science program, also have to do some type of research in association with their studies. And that's why roughly 50% of our engineering science graduates actually go into research after their 4 years of study as well. So 2 totally different approaches, really based on what you're passionate about and what you want to get out of your studies. Finally, before I get to the admissions, I quickly just want to touch base about our engineering community. Now, we really, really value the diverse group that is our engineering community. Roughly 1 in 4 of our students are international students coming from over 100 different countries. And just this last year, and we're working towards growing it every year, 40% of our first year population was comprised of women, which is the highest, I think, among any engineering programs in Canada, and it's something that we really, really are proud of. The thing with this diversity slide and really talking about our student population is that we really think that there's value in both in the classroom and outside of the classroom when you bring people from all different walks of life who have all these different experiences, putting them together in this engineering program and having them work together, bounce ideas off one another. It really leads to a really great learning environment for our faculty and of course for our students as well. As a U of T engineering student, we have 75 specific engineering clubs and teams available to you. So tons of intramural sports teams. If you're interested in writing, producing, and directing your own play, we have our school night team. Or if you're interested in racing a solar car across the Australian outback, we also have a solar car racing team as well. So really, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're interested in, there is a club for you. And as a U of T engineering student, you also have access to over 800 clubs and teams across U of T in general. So there's tons of opportunities available to you to get involved outside of the classroom, as well as outside of the academic realm as well. And finally, just I want to touch upon our student supports. The great thing with our student supports is simply the notion that from first year all the way to fourth year, you have a dedicated team and a number of different teams that are there to help you out. Starting in first year, we have our first year office that is there to really help you bridge from high school to university. If you're lost on campus, they're there to point you in the right direction. Or if you need help with your, math work, if you need help with talking to an advisor, whatever it might be, they're there to help you out to make sure that you succeed in that first year because of that transition. Because transitioning from high school to university is tricky for some students, and we want to make sure that we have the supports in place to help you succeed. In addition to that, we have tons of other specialized advisors as well as general services and supports that, again, help our students not only in first year, but in their upper years as well. These supports, coupled with just our dedicated and brilliant student body, shows why we have a 95% success rate as our students move from first year to second year as well. Now, all this stuff that I'm talking about, the big emphasis, and before I get to this slide, I just want to mention really what we're talking about with our experiential learning opportunities, all of the different ways to customize your academics, and the supportive community we have, is that we're trying to nurture the whole engineer. And what I mean by that, it's not just what you learn about in class, but also what you learn in those co-op experiences, on that sports team, when working with our first year office. All those different experiences nurture the whole engineer, and at the end of the day, allow you to engineer for the world. Year after year, we continue to rank as having some of the most employable graduates coming out of the University of Toronto, and that's really because employers really recognize the hard work, the dedication, and the effort that it takes in order to finish the programs and, of course, succeed afterwards as well. Now, quickly, last few minutes here, I just want to touch upon our admissions and finance information. Simply put, this is what our general admission process looks like. Now, by the time you're applying, things might look a little bit different and things might have changed. But the main emphasis is, these are the 7 steps that come into play. With U of T Engineering, we have an additional application process that you need to take part in. And that's steps 2 and 3, also known as our engineering applicant portal and our online student profile. Now, U of T Engineering focuses on a broad-based admissions approach. And what I simply mean by that is, as I was talking about, engineering for the world, we want to nurture the whole engineer. Even before you come to U of T, we want to see who you are as a person, not just what your transcript has to say about you. And so what broad-based admission simply means is that it's more than just grades, and it allows us to consider all of your academic and outside of the classroom achievements as well. The 3 things we really look at is your academic success. So your transcripts are important at the end of the day, but of course we also look at your extracurricular involvement. So if you're at home right now and you're in grade 11, grade 10, whatever it might be, and you are interested in engineering, I do want to emphasize the notion that extracurriculars really do go a long way in your application to U of T Engineering. So that is really anything you do outside of the classroom, and it doesn't have to be math or science related. So if you're interested, if you're part of a sports team, if you're part of a club, an organization, if you've taken part in competitions, if you have a part-time job, if you volunteer, any of those things really help your application and just show our team who you are as opposed to just what your grades are. And I encourage you, if you take anything from this presentation today, I encourage you to just remember, if you're interested in U of T engineering, start getting involved inside and outside of the classroom, just to start building that extracurricular involvement and help you, with the future application that you might be putting in. And finally, we look at your personal profile. The personal profile is simply a set of 3 questions that we ask, where you just record yourself responding. 2 are recordings and 1 is a written response. And they're just general problem-solving questions, so our team gets a better idea of how you think, how you analyze information, and how you think on your feet as well. Really quickly, I know we do have a big population from Alberta. So these are just the grades and the subjects that we're looking for in your grade 11 and 12 years. For anyone who is outside of Alberta, really the big emphasis is chemistry, physics, maths, and English. Those are really the emphasis, those 4 grades: English, physics, chemistry, and the maths. So some students, calculus, functions, those are the topics that we're looking at, and those are the pre-required courses that you need to take in order to be eligible to apply. Lastly, I just want to say, and I'll put my information in the chat after the presentation, but I just want to say, feel free to follow up with us at our email, engineering@utoronto.ca, if you do have any questions. And of course, visit our website, ufteng.ca/discover. There's tons of videos, tons of information, tons of resources available to you. And it's just a great way to get started. And then if you have any questions, please follow up with us. And of course, I'll be here for the Q&A as well to try to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it over to the Ignite team.
Thank you so much for that incredibly informative presentation. So just before we move on, someone asked in the chat if they could access the presentation afterwards. So would you be okay if we sent the presentation that you sent us over to our event attendees?
So unfortunately, we can't publicly release the presentation just because it's based from our communications team and they have access to it. But again, I'm more than happy to chat or even put my personal email to answer any questions as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that presentation. With that being said, we'll be moving on to Nina with her presentation. So Nina, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Sounds good. Yeah, okay. Let me just share my screen. Let me know if you can see this. Yes, my first slide is a little weird, but yeah, can everyone see it?
Yeah, you're good.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. So hi, nice to, I guess, meet all of you. My name is Nina, and I think I introduced myself already, but basically, like many of you, I was not the same person a few years ago. I sort of went from playing a lot of Sims 3, kind of obsessed. I didn't have this world, but it's a pretty interesting one, as you can see, to simulating a lot of AI models and getting really interested in coding. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of today, I'll be talking a lot about, that's my journey within getting into biology and that intersection with programming. And also, yeah, I'll be talking about stuff that I've learned and that, advice in general that I have. Yeah, cool. So if I told my 11-year-old self that I was going to be speaking somewhere today, I would have assumed it was to speak of my record high score in Subway Surfers. But I'm pretty happy that it's not. So yeah, I mean, like many of you, I've sort of been in that spot in life where I don't really know what I want to do and not really sure how to spend my time, or, maybe I did know what I want to do. I did at some points, but, how do I get towards that? So I'm going to be talking a lot about that today. Cool. Yeah, so basically talking a little bit about my journey, I first got sort of interested in medicine and everything to do with medicine when in the early 2010s, when my relatives were going through different aging-related diseases, such as dementia, different types of dementias. And I remember sort of wondering, why does that happen? And, wondering what I could do about it. And of course, as a 5-year-old or 6-year-old kid, I probably couldn't do much about it, but it did sort of plant a seed in my head that when I joined a program called TKS, or the Knowledge Society, in 2018, I sort of got the tools to actually accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. TKS is sort of a human accelerator for people aged 13 to 18. And yeah, I got to sort of, I got the tools to sort of accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, and actually begin working on aging-related diseases and preventing those. So yeah, and then from there, I had a lot of different ideas. I'm sure if any of you guys can relate. And in March 2019, I wrote a research proposal, and I sent it out to 100 labs. I remember that it's not even an exaggeration at this point. Like I actually counted at one point. It was 100 labs, and 10 got back to me, and one actually said, "Yeah, why don't we work on this?" So yeah, from there it was a really cool project. It was sort of around finding features of the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, of senescent or zombie-like cells. So that was really cool. And I realized that it might have some commercial potential. So I created a business biotin around it. Sorry, our logo's a little blurry, but yes, I created a business biotin around it. And basically what we wanted to do was to develop it a lot more and see if we can use it to find drugs that target senescent cells in mitochondria. And we realized that, well, the senescent cell of mitochondria. And basically what we realized was that it wasn't that feasible of an idea in the end. But then we decided to transition to a different type of product, which I think I mentioned at the beginning of this call, but was sort of a biological age test to find out, like, what is your current state of health and how can you make it better? And sort of around that, what is your biological age compared to your chronological age? I'm 15, but I might be, due to my lifestyle, like way less age than that, or way more age, I don't know. So yeah, it's kind of giving that information and putting sort of health in the hands of different people. So yeah, we started working on that. We made a lot of progress in the past while. We've been getting a lot of interest from different vendors and yeah, potential clients, which has been really exciting. And yeah, we've just been sort of hunkered down during quarantine working on the product, which has been really cool. So yeah, that's, I guess, a little bit about me and what I've done in the past. Now, I actually wanted to devote a slide to this because I think one of the most important things for people in general is talking about our struggles, right? Because I find that, whenever I talk to people around me who are doing such cool things, and I'm like, whoa, how do you do all that? And then no one ever tells me about their struggles. But, when we do have like deeper conversations, I kind of learn about, what their struggles are. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I relate so much to that. And it just helps me a lot in my confidence. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk about I definitely am perfectionist, and this is not in the, I know that's sort of a cliche thing. I was like, oh, it's a weakness, but it's actually a strength. Like, I don't mean it in that sense. I mean it more in the sense that, it's sort of like where you feel like you have to be perfect. Like you feel like you have to hit a certain standard that, it's sad when you don't hit it. So that's definitely like a struggle of mine that I'm trying to work on right now. Also, I'm incredibly nervous right now. And just whenever I do any public speaking, pretty nervous. And also, whenever I reach out to professors and people, it's just like, it's hard to feel like you deserve that time or deserve like what you have. So I don't know. I mean, I've been working on that one by knowing that no one would give me time if they didn't feel I deserved it. And also if, just in general, deserving what you have, it's more about like earning and putting, like, I guess, doing your best by what you have, Anyways, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I just feel like it's such an important thing to talk about. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I wanted to kind of bring up, what can you do? And I guess what advice do I have for you? Because I think it's just generally, I don't know, that's the point of this presentation, right? I'm not going to just ramble on about my story and stuff for a long time, but yeah. So basically, sorry. Basically, so what's it called? Yeah. So I guess generally, the goal here is to make fun posts in front of the sunset. Not really, but the goal is just to kind of live a happy life and to, to feel good about what you do. Yeah, and basically, so what's it called? Yeah, so basically, in terms of, I guess the first thing you should probably be doing is, setting goals. So goals are one of the most important things you can set and work on. And basically, okay, so I wanted to kind of approach this from an angle of, hey, if you don't know what you want to do at all in life, like, and to kind of approaching it from that angle, because I feel like that's sort of, starting from scratch. But I feel like what's really important with, goals, and I don't think you can just get a bullet journal and write it all out, but unfortunately not. That would be really cool if that, somehow helped you figure out everything. But I mean, I think like, finding what you want to do in life is like a really big subject. But my sort of suggestion is just like talking to people around you, like learning things from different people and trying to get information around like subjects you're interested in, and trying to see, what's it called? So trying to see, what would be interesting to me to look into? What problems do I want to solve? Where do I want to be in life in like a few years? Yeah, I mean, that's always a really interesting thing to look into. Also, a question I like asking myself sometimes is, if I were to not like, if I only had a month left, like, what would I want to have done? Or I mean, you can extend that time or decrease that time, just knowing like, what do you want to do in general in life? And I guess it's a hard topic, but just talk to people around you. And once you have that, and you know where you want to be, and start thinking about how you're going to get there. So I'd recommend setting like a 3-3-3 goals. So it's sort of like 3 weeks, 3 months, and 3 years. So, what are my goals for the next 3 weeks? What are my goals for the next 3 months? And what are my goals for the next 3 years? You don't have to stick to that perfectly, but just do what you can. Yeah. And also, one other piece of advice is talk to people who are in the same situation that you want to be in a few years. And because they're the ones who can give you the best, most tailored advice, right? Because this is very general. But if someone specifically if you want to specifically be doing, if there's something you specifically want to be doing, just talk to people around you who are doing that thing, Yeah, I guess also don't live with any regrets. And I know this sounds like really general. And I mean, you could also make more poses in front of the sun too. But basically, I don't know. This is such an important like philosophy for me personally, because I think that, I don't know, there's so many times in the moment where I'm like, holy crap, I wish I just said this, or I wish I just did this. And it's such a discouraging thing to think about and to like worry about. And honestly, just learn from everything you do, really. Like, just think about action items for next time. Like, did this talk, I remember, maybe I said this wrong thing, or I want to speak slower. Then probably, I said an action item, like I'm going to speak a little bit slower, like this much slower for next time, and also like another point of that is just in the moment, like, when you feel like you're going to regret something or going to be sad that you didn't do something, like, in a few, I don't know, days, months, whenever, just do it. Like you don't even have to think about it. I don't know. I remember once I wanted to go see a lab meeting, and I was invited, but I realized that I came on the wrong week. Well, I didn't. Okay. What happened was they basically said it was, every week on Tuesday, but that was the one Tuesday that they had it off. So I came, and then there was no lab meeting, and I was feeling really discouraged. But then I was like, I'm just gonna go back in because there were some scientists in there, and I basically talked with the scientists the whole time, which was also really cool. Just like go and just do stuff, but yeah, also like school gives learning kind of a bad rap. Like, not always, but like, sometimes like, you feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to memorize these 15,000 pages of history material for like tomorrow. And it's sort of, oh gosh, is this what learning is? But that's not what learning is. Learning is sort of just getting really interested and like passionate about something, and just spending, whatever time you want to spend on that, like just gathering, information, but also just learning about problems, learning from people, learning about stories. Like, that's the cool part, right? So if you decided, today or yesterday or something like that you were really interested in a specific type of cancer, then, spending your time reading about that and learning about that, and, talking to people with that type of cancer, if you have access to that, that's I mean, if you're passionate about it, then you will most of the time enjoy learning about it. Obviously, it's not perfect all the time. Sometimes you're tired of it. Sometimes you don't want to read another research paper, but like, that night, but it's still, and most of the time, if you are passionate about it, it's just exciting to learn about those types of things. Yeah. So also support. I spoke at a conference in May 2019, and basically, I remember I was so nervous, as I normally am, but my friends were all kind of like waiting for me and talking and sort of clapping and like in the front row, and that just gave me so much confidence and so much like happiness about where I was and what I was doing, and it's just those moments of support and people like rallying around you that just make you, like a happier person, that, actually are proven to increase longevity if you're interested in that. And also, just generally give you a way to fall back if you aren't feeling like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if, you have negative feelings, you can talk to people about it. So like, support is just one of the most important things, especially surrounding yourself with like-minded people who want to do who have similar goals to you, and who have similar priorities to you, because that's always just, it's a great feeling, and it's a great thing. Yeah. And also, like, I just want to talk a little bit about change, because I think that we should all strive to be like a better person of ourselves every day. And of course, there are some days we have off, like, I have so many off days, and that's okay. But, just like trying your best and putting in your best effort every day to, be the person you aim to be or you wish you were. Like, well, not in the sense that, don't obviously like, oh, I need to be this person, but more, be a better version of yourself every day. And, just want to talk about one other thing. Like, we are all sort of, I like to kind of think of life like as a mountain. It's a fun mountain, but it is a mountain. And it's sort of like we're all climbing different ones. But, so that's why we can't compare our own climb and our own descent and trajectory to someone else's, because it's sort of like they're completely different mountains, So I don't know. I think that's a really interesting thing to ponder over. Just compare yourself to your previous version of yourself and try to be the best version that you can be. Yeah, but I mean, also just in terms of opportunities, I mean, everyone here, like, so far has talked about really interesting things with medical school and engineering school, and those are all really great, really awesome opportunities. So adding those to sort of my my speaking point list, I was gonna mention, there are 3 sort of opportunities that, I'd recommend sort of pursuing. And these are not specific opportunities, more just general categories of opportunities. But yeah, wow, it's so, what everyone is talking about previously was like so cool. So you guys should follow that, look into that too, if you're really interested in that. But yeah, so basically, opportunities wise, I think that one main thing you can do if you are passionate about a mission is find an organization with that same mission and like work with them. And I know it's obviously not as easily said as, it's not as easily done as said. You have to find an organization, you have to reach out, you have to talk with them about this, and it's hard, but if you keep on going at it, you can find an organization that really just fits well with you. I found like so many organizations who, have had the similar beliefs as me, and it's just been amazing working with them. So that's always a really useful thing. Also, if you have an idea, just like go for it, gather a team around it who believes in the idea and go for it. The advantage about an organization is that you have more resources. So if you do have ideas, you can carry them out there. But on your own, if you want to just bootstrap it or just go all out on it, why not? I mean, you're either gonna achieve success or you're gonna learn from it, and both are pretty good options. Yeah, and lastly, professors. So working with, if you're interested, I'm assuming everyone here is interested in STEM, so I'm not gonna, obviously, but if you are interested in doing any type of academic research, professors are incredibly welcoming, and, a lot of them, if you reach out to them, they'll, give you time, and they'll talk to you about, yeah, I mean, their labs work, you'll be able to potentially, if it goes well, work with them. But yeah, I mean, overall, that's, I guess, yeah, thank you for watching. Yeah, I mean, I hope if you take one thing away from this talk, it's sort of just like find what you want to go at and just go at it, and I guess form goals around it, and also, talk to people and try for help forming those goals and for help, I guess getting to where you want to be. So yeah, that's my website, and my email's on there, but I'll put it in the chat. I hope you like this presentation.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. It's so crazy how you've done so much and you're only 15. I think that's super inspiring. Next, we have Tiffany Tran, who's going to talk about her experiences with pre-med and research. So Tiffany, you can take it away.
Okay, everyone. Thank you, Nina. That was like really energizing. It was so cool to see that you're so young and you've done so much stuff. I'm not that young. I'm a little older, so taking it from that perspective. So hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I am a non-traditional pre-med student here in Southern California in the United States. My presentation is going to be a lot about my journey specifically as being a pre-med. And so the title of it is Not Good at STEM equals Pre-Med, because actually I am one of those pre-meds who was not good at STEM, but let's explore that a little bit more and see how you can become a physician even if you're not good at STEM. So who am I? So basically, this is a little brief summary about, what I've done in the past 4 or 5 years. I went to the University of California, Irvine here in Southern California. I graduated with 2 degrees, one in biological sciences and one in political science. And that piques a lot of people's interest because not everyone who wants to become a physician majors in political science. We'll get into that in a little bit. I'm on the first of 2 gap years. I will be applying, like I said prior, to medical school within the next 2 months, actually. So it's a really exciting and nerve-wracking time at the same time. I currently work as a medical assistant at an endocrinologist's office, as well as a junior research specialist, which is just a fancy name for a paid research assistant at a medical school lab. And I've had a lot of involvements in college, not just these and not just those involving just STEM. In particular for my research, I've actually done 2 types of research. The first is with the lab that I currently work at the UCI School of Medicine. It's basically looking at the bleed patterns in the cerebellum and the frontal lobes of mice in regards to chronic kidney disease. If you're really interested in research, my email will be linked at the end so I can go into that in more detail, but that's the basic gist of what I'm studying there at my lab, as well as just investigating like what happens to your gut microbiome. So like the inside of your intestines and basically just like your stomach and gut flora and healthy bacteria, what happens to it when you have diabetes. And the second part of my research was really interesting. It was a political science research case, and we were actually following the activity trends of former U.S. presidents. So we were looking at. I know a lot of you are not from the United States, but we were looking at President Reagan, and then for the later half of my time in college, we were actually analyzing former President Trump's Twitter activity, which was really interesting. But now that his Twitter's been removed, that project's been canceled, but it was an interesting part of my pre-med journey. So what kind of sets me apart? And I think in particular, I like putting this slide in when I come to talk to panels because I'm not a very traditional pre-med. I struggled significantly throughout college. That's kind of what I'm known to talk about. I have failed classes, I've withdrawn from classes, and I had a really difficult time in college adjusting. I'm not naturally good at science or math. Actually, probably chemistry and calculus are my most hated subjects. I learned to overcome those through the study tips that I share now on my Instagram. I worked multiple jobs during college, and I had a lot of life circumstances that made my mental health deteriorate quite a bit. And so I didn't really have anyone to go to when I was on my pre-med journey and I was struggling. Everyone out there that I know always talks about the success story of them getting into medical school, them becoming a physician, but I never really heard anyone talk about their journey of like in the moment struggling. And so I focus a lot of, my Instagram page, and, it's also why I came to this panel, is to share that there are people who are struggling. And just because you struggle, it doesn't mean that you can't become a physician or an engineer or whatever career you want to become. You just have to learn to overcome that. And so I kind of tell the story of, how I failed organic chemistry, which is a prerequisite for your medical schools here in the United States. I failed that class twice. I took a step back, and then, I really refocused myself, found good mentors, found good study tips, and then I'm now on the trajectory of having earned straight A's the past 2 years and applying to medical school. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You just need to know who to ask and who to seek guidance from. The second reason why I'm not your traditional pre-med is I wasn't significantly focused on just STEM activities. So everyone always talks about research, but for example, I went on to manage a student-run free clinic. So here in the United States, you need insurance to be seen by most medical care providers. And so the clinic allows patients to be seen without insurance for free. We provide surgeries and dental as well. So, it was a really big honor to manage that clinic, as well as run their social media aspect, because especially during the pandemic, when we are also disconnected, social media is a great avenue to educate patients and also spread awareness about what, these different organizations are doing. I have grown up in Southern California most of my life. So homelessness is a big issue here in Southern California. And so I'm the type of person that when I see an issue, I want to go out and change it. And so I went on to found an organization to help combat homelessness here in Southern California. And, we've partnered along with various organizations across the country to help spread awareness and educate others about how they can better impact these communities, especially during a time like COVID, where we cannot physically go out and give food or shelter or clothing. What can we do to better support these individuals who are facing housing insecurity? And the final thing is I run an Instagram, studygram, and I also actually run a virtual mentoring program through my Instagram. If any of you are looking for someone, who can give a little bit of guidance into being a pre-med here in the United States or applying to medical school, join my mentorship program. It's free. It currently has like 230 something mentees that I personally mentor one-on-one. So if you are interested in joining that program, please come find me through Instagram, and I'd love to sit down with you and have a chat. But ultimately, my story in a nutshell just goes on to say that you do not have to be the stereotypical pre-med. You don't have to fit the pre-med mold in order to become a physician. And that's what I really want to impress upon you guys today. And so I've actually prepared a little bit of a case study. Like I previously said, I work at an endocrinologist office. And so we had a patient come in yesterday, and I thought this would be a really cool example to show you guys why exactly I think politics and healthcare kind of intersect, and how the two of them kind of intermingle despite many of us thinking that they're actually separate. So for the two of them, I have impact versus, so on one side, I have impact over legislation. So, it's one thing to write legislation or laws that affect certain patients, right? And it can have all the best intention with it, but how it's executed and that impact far outweighs the legislation. So that's one side of the intersection of politics and healthcare. And the other side is that people are people first over patients. Because when you're studying to become a physician, we get these things, case studies on patients, Jane Robinson and a Bob Ross, whatever you want to say, who is experiencing a certain type of disease, and how do we treat them? That's one side of it. But then when you take those lessons that you learn from those case studies, how do you apply it to real people? So like, for example, how do you apply it to someone like myself, who is having, this maybe these type of issues and is looking for this type of diagnosis? How do you apply that? And so those are the two aspects of how politics and healthcare intersect, and what I really focus on personally in my own journey to become a physician. So the case study today, you guys are more than welcome to ask more questions later if you have questions, but it's fairly simple. So yesterday at my clinic, we had a patient named Avery. Avery uses the pronouns they, them, because they are a female, they were a female assigned at birth. So if those of you who don't know what that is, basically they were born a female, but the more appropriate term is female assigned at birth. She's a female, they are a female assigned at birth patient seeking care during masculizing hormone therapy at a new medical office. So essentially they are asking for testosterone treatment so that they can transition into becoming a transgender man. And so what happened yesterday at my clinic was essentially I am the person who goes over these new patient forms. And so when I came across Avery's, there were three things that I noted. The first thing was that in the checkbox of gender, there was either male or female, and Avery physically had to write in non-binary. So that is the first aspect of the form that I realized was not inclusive to a patient. And that is something that we can improve on in our medical office. The second thing was, as you were just seeing me, I was trying to make sure that I was using the correct pronouns for Avery. The other medical staff, as well as my physicians, kept on referring to Avery as she, because Avery was technically born a female. However, as we are progressing further and further into, understanding, the psychology behind healthcare and how to better serve patients, it's more appropriate for us as future medical providers, as pre-med students, as volunteers, to ask patients what their pronouns are and to use their preferred pronouns. And not only that, to educate others on how to use those pronouns. So again, because Avery is a patient who is female assigned at birth, she prefers pronouns they, them. And finally, the third aspect was my physician does not specialize particularly in the care that Avery was looking for. And so we were having a hard time referring her to a physician or a PA who does care for, patients who are transitioning. And that just goes to show that we have a lot of, there's a lot of room for growth in the scope of healthcare, just because there's not a lot of providers who focus in on, treating such minority groups. But it is important because, again, you want patients like Avery to be well cared for in every office, not just in one or two. And so in that case study, these are just 6 factors that I thought up of right off the top of my head about perhaps why Avery came to my medical office, or what are factors that caused Avery to go to my medical office versus some other medical office, or be more informed about what medical providers she could have sought. So for example, these are just 6 general factors: income, language barrier, cultural stigmas, access to education, housing and food security, and mental health. So all 6 of these factors could have played, different parts into the health that Avery had, and why she sought my office versus another office. A good example of this is, for example, so I came to find out that Avery is a Spanish-speaking patient, and so they do not have a strong grasp of the English language, so they were just referred to my office by word of mouth. And so in a lot of times when you're on the internet, a lot of things are not translated, directly into one's native tongue if you're not a native English speaker. And so, understanding that aspect and figuring out how to address it so that we can help patients like Avery is an essential part of, becoming a more informed healthcare provider and informing patients better so that they can take control of their health. So that's just one example. So throughout my presentation, I hope you guys can all see that having understanding of politics and having understanding of what goes on in health beyond the bacteria or viral pathology that goes into disease, all of that does somehow equal pre-med, because, and I hope all of you are beginning to understand this in your own course of study, or, who you follow on social media, or, who you talk to at home. But the field of medicine is moving far beyond understanding like what causes the coronavirus. Now it's understanding what are factors that cause certain patients to be at higher risk of coronavirus or COVID-19. And so that's why, in many sense, you can still be a pre-med and not be good at STEM. It doesn't mean that you can just all bypass all STEM classes or bypass difficult subjects like calculus, organic chemistry, or physics, but it does just go to show that you don't necessarily have to be super great at them to be pre-med. You just have to know how to work smart, and then, apply your gifts in other ways to help other patients. And I just like to end on these last 2 things, that failure is not final. I know for many of you, perhaps you will come to apply for college applications soon. Being rejected by your dream college would not be the end. I know for a lot of people who I talk to, it does seem like it, but I can tell you, as someone who is now a year removed from college, when I got rejected from my dream college, I didn't think that, I'd be able to go on to become a physician, or whatnot, but I ended up being here. And I think the college I ended up going to was the best fit for me. So it all really does work out in the end. And then final thing is just be genuine and just be passionate about what you do. As you can tell from all the other speakers who've come prior to me, they're all very passionate about what they talk about, and you can see it. And that's why they love to come to these panels and share their knowledge. Have that same type of enthusiasm or passion. It doesn't have to be about politics and healthcare, for example, or it doesn't have to be about engineering, but it can be about something else. Just have that passion and that energy to go and inspire someone else to look into the field that you're in. And that's basically it for me. If you'd like to connect, I've left my Instagram, I've left my email. I'm not super active on Twitter, but definitely the best places to find me are my Instagram and email. And yeah, if I'll be sticking around for the Q&A if any of you guys have questions, but thank you again for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for that incredibly informative presentation. I think it was really interesting. The intersection between politics and healthcare is definitely something that most people don't often consider. So thank you so much for that. We will be moving into our final presentation from Audrey, our final panelist, and I'll let her introduce herself and take it away.
All right, hi everyone. I will just try sharing my slides real quick. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, awesome. So hi everyone. Really excited to be here today. Thank you so much to the organizers for having me. My name is Audrey. I am the founder and executive director of WiTech, which is short for Women in Technology. We are a global youth-led nonprofit organization based in the Philippines, but with 19 chapters spread out across 10 countries around the world. So overall, we aim to close the gender and accessibility gaps that exist in technology. When I'm not working on that, I'm also a freshman at Stanford University, where I intend to major in science, technology, and society, or symbolic systems. I say intend to major because at Stanford, we don't have to declare until our sophomore year. So, and I can talk a bit more about that if you have questions, so just let me know. But firstly, how did I start WiTech at the age of 15, and how did I somehow find myself running this nonprofit with people from around the world and coordinating with a team of over 250 youth from across the globe? Well, my story really starts in a middle school computer classroom. I was born and raised in the Philippines, where we have to take this nationally mandated computer class. And I say computer in quotation marks because we didn't do actually any like programming or any specific curriculum about startups. It was about more on how to use Microsoft Office, think about Word, PowerPoint, Excel. And when I was growing up, I did not find that particularly exciting until one day my teacher decided to go completely off curriculum and introduced us to this game where a snake had to navigate a maze using blocks that represented lines of code. I remember thinking for the first time in my life that, wow, this is what the technology that I use on a pretty day-to-day basis is made of, code. And I want to learn this mysterious language of computers and one day be able to create my own apps and websites. But when I asked my teacher if we would be learning more about programming in class, I was told that no, it isn't part of the national Philippine curriculum, so we wouldn't be learning about coding any further. But she said if I was really very keen in learning more, I could go online and look up free tutorials from there. And that's in essence what I did for the rest of middle school and high school. When I wasn't in clubs or in class or studying or just doing regular kid stuff, I was sat in front of my laptop Googling how to learn how to code, free computer science tutorials. In that process, I found websites like code.org that let me create snowflakes using blocks that represented lines of code. I went on Codecademy and I learned HTML, CSS, Java, JavaScript, basic Python via those platforms. And when I went on YouTube to look for computer science lectures, I found that Harvard's entire CS50, so Introduction to Computer Science lectures, all of that was just available online, completely for free. Fast forward to high school, grade 9, and I started getting asked the very scary question, what do you want to be when you grow up? What college do you want to apply to, or what do you want to major in? And in the Philippines, I don't know, I'm not quite familiar with the system where you are all calling from, but in the Philippines, we have to declare quite early what we want to specialize in because we have this thing called a senior high school program. So by grade 11, we need to choose if we want to go into a STEM track or a humanities track or an accountancy business management track. So I told a lot of people that I wanted to go into STEM, in particular to focus on perhaps computer science. To that, I was met with a lot of mixed reactions. My parents, I love them to bits, had very next to no background in technology as they were both former bankers. My peers were surprised and they said, oh wow, Audrey, it's really brave that you want to go into tech because you're the only girl in our grade that wants to do so. And I discovered shortly after that I was only one of 2 girls in the entire grade that wanted to go into STEM as a whole. The other girl wanting to be a doctor, so very different from my aspirations in the tech industry. But I think the feedback overall that hit me the hardest was when a teacher said to me, Audrey, you don't seem like a good fit for tech. And in hindsight, it stung, but I also kind of agreed with her that I couldn't imagine myself being a good fit for tech because I couldn't even name a single woman in technology. When I thought of big figures in the tech industry, I thought of Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, basically middle-aged white guys that I had very little in common with. And that led me to think, so where are the women in tech? They have to be somewhere, and I want to get to know them, their stories, and find motivation and inspiration from that. So I did really what any teenager would do when faced with the problem. I went to Google and I quite literally Googled women in technology. From there, I found out about the massive gender gap in tech, not just in the Philippines, but around the world. For context, I read that according to the Philippine Startup Survey, only 18% of tech companies back home were founded by women. And I read according to PayScale, women in tech are globally paid 18 to 22% less than their male counterparts. So keep in mind, I was 15 at this time, still very young, and I could have easily thought to myself, okay, maybe let's not go into a field where I'll be underrepresented and underpaid. I'm young, I can just like choose another job. But I was and still am really stubborn. And in the face of those statistics, instead of getting overwhelmed, I got really angry. And I thought that it's so inherently unfair that just because of gender, men and women are treated differently, given different opportunities, paid less. So that's what really led my thought process into starting something, anything really, to contribute to help closing the gender gap in technology. And that's where WiTech, the Women in Tech blog, was born. I would go on the hashtag Women in Tech on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I would cold message all of these women that were publicly sharing their profiles as biotechnologists, as data scientists, user experience developers, and I'd message them and I'd say, hi, my name is Audrey, I'm 15 and I'm looking for some role models in the tech industry. Would you be willing to answer some questions about your job, about what it's like being a woman in tech? And I'll write this feature for you on the WiTech blog for hopefully more young girls like me to access and be inspired by. One of my favorite interviewees at the WiTech blog, her name's Allison Folk, and she is a user experience developer and a part-time model. Allison taught me that being good at tech and being feminine shouldn't be mutually exclusive, because prior to meeting her, I very much had this stereotype that a successful person in tech like looked or act a lot like, you know, like Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. So Allison really broke those gender stereotypes and made me explore not just STEM, but also like the intersections of STEM and the arts, so STEAM. But as much as I enjoyed interviewing those women like Allison, and as much as I was very, very motivated by their stories, I kept asking myself, is this actually enacting any tangible change in closing the gender gap in tech? Because the word inspiring kept on being thrown around. Like people would comment, oh, these women are so inspiring, these articles are so inspiring, etc. But I couldn't help but think, like, what good is this inspiration if it doesn't lead to action? When we think about things like the climate action movement, we can post on our Instagram stories and share things on Facebook about sustainability and like using, you know, like reusable straws and things like that, which is all well and good, but unless we actually take the concrete actions and steps into incorporating more zero waste lifestyles and sustainability into our lifestyles, the problem in itself isn't going to change. So that was really like the overarching thought I had with me, like how do we turn inspiration into action in order to tangibly create change within the gender gap in technology? And with that kind of line of thought, WiTech transitioned from a blog into a community organization that hosted the first Women in Tech conference for students and by students in the Philippines. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Grace Hopper conference that exists in the US. So it's this massive like Women in Tech conference, and I'd see opportunities like that abroad. And I kept asking myself, why aren't things like this accessible in my home country, the Philippines? And why do we have to wait for adults to set up these events geared towards diversity and inclusivity in our community? So instead of just waiting, I banded together with a group of girls that I had met at a hackathon, and we started this conference. We partnered with Accenture Philippines, and we're able to bring together about 30 to 40 young girls from as young as middle school to as old, I guess, as like recent college graduates, to engage in a day-long conference about learning about the achievements of women in tech, but also workshops, hands-on workshops wherein they were taught about the basics of biotechnology, digital marketing, introductory coding, that sort of thing. So I think it's really important to mention as well that this conference was open to absolutely everyone. And in our team, we had a couple of guys as well that helped organize it. And it's really, I say this because I think when it comes to like the women in tech movement, there's very much this misconception that it's only something that women should be paying attention to, when it's very much not. Everybody, regardless of your gender, should be involved in helping close the gender gap in tech. And I say this because in a 50-50 tech workplace, men aren't just going to disappear from the conversation. They're still very much going to be there, and they're going to need to be active participants and allies. And that can be through learning about the different stories of women in tech, supporting them, making sure that when microaggressions occur, they're called out, that sort of thing. So that's a quick note about kind of diversity and inclusivity throughout our projects. But again, like going back to that idea of turning inspiration into action, I really felt that we were finally doing that with WiTech when one of the girls in the upper right-hand picture, the one in pink, her mom reached out to me a couple of months after this Women in Tech conference, saying that Mona, the girl in pink, had dressed up as a software engineer for Halloween and was actively telling people that she wanted to go into tech after attending our conference. And that was just so exciting because she also reached out a couple of months later saying that she wanted to ask me a couple of questions about WiTech for a school project. And when I asked what the project was about, it was to interview somebody that you look up to. And that really warmed my heart and made me realize that maybe we're onto something with WiTech, that maybe this blog turned into organization could tangibly make change in closing the gender gap in tech by providing a community for young girls that want to excel in tech or just simply explore the opportunities that lay within it. Despite that kind of excitement and joy that came after that conference, my team and I couldn't help but notice that most of the participants at this conference came from middle to upper class backgrounds, and that they had the access to go home, look up a CS tutorial, and engage with tech further, like I did. And in the Philippines, where such a huge portion of the population lives under the poverty line, we knew that tech inherently, just being able to do things like hop on this Zoom call, like that's a privilege and not every Filipino gets to have. So in order to really stand by that principle of equality at WiTech, we decided that we needed to go to the communities that needed tech access the most, primarily provincial communities like Marawi, as seen in this picture. So Marawi was a city that was bombed in 2017 due to suspected terrorists back in the southern part of the Philippines. And a lot of these students had their education disrupted and were at that time living in evacuation centers. And in order to help them catch up with their education, we wanted to help digitalize the educational processes that they were going through. And we did that by giving them secondhand laptops that we had gathered from donors. So bear in mind, a lot of these students had never used laptops before. So the workshops that we conducted with them included how to turn on a laptop, how to use the keys, how to use Microsoft Office, think about like Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Through this, we taught a group of 34 students, and we asked them if any of them had heard of programming before we introduced a programming workshop via Scratch. And of that group of 34, only one raised his hand. And he said that, oh, isn't programming that thing where you type pretty fast, yeah? And we might have chuckled and smiled for a bit, but it made my team and I realize that that was the highest extent of knowledge about programming in that entire class. And if we really wanted to make sure that everybody gets into tech and has equal opportunity in tech, we're going to need to look past gender and also just like look into socioeconomic status and make sure that everybody, regardless of gender or socioeconomic status, has access to tech and the potential to use it for social good. So these are kind of some of our stats as of late, but this actually hasn't been updated in a bit. But it gives an overview of some of our other projects. We do our conferences, talks geared towards talking about how women use tech to achieve sustainable development goals. Prior to COVID, we did roadshows in which we visited public and private high schools and we talked about technology, because simply in the Philippines, there's a stereotype that to go into STEM, you're either going to be a doctor or an engineer. And we really wanted to break that and get kids excited about careers in technology. Also, throughout the past year, so before studying at Stanford, I took a gap year to work on WiTech's different projects, primarily its chapter expansion program, in which we were able to go from having one chapter based in the Philippines to having 19 chapters spread out across the globe. So this isn't like our updated list, but we've been able to open chapters in Liberia, India, Malaysia, Vietnam. So what ties all of our chapters together is just mutual focus on wanting to close the gender and accessibility gaps in tech. We've had chapters have hackathons, others create online talks, workshops, webinars. And if ever you want to get involved with the chapter, I will be showing my contact details later on, or you can just check out at WiTech.org and my @ that's shown at the bottom of the slide. We also did a fundraiser at the beginning of COVID to raise funds for students that were at risk of dropping out due to the lack of tech resources. we think that it's very important for us all to realize that this internet connectivity, this access to be able to hop on a Zoom call, do online classes is not something that everybody gets to have. And by that token, if we want to talk about education being a human right, we now should be having conversations about technology being a human right as well. And currently not a lot of people, especially from developing countries like the Philippines, have access to that. So that's kind of me, that's my work with WiTech in a nutshell. I'm really excited to see if you all have any questions about WiTech, about Stanford. I'd be happy to talk about the Science, Technology, and Society program or Symbolic Systems program if you want to know more about it, or just generally you want to have a quick chat about like what college is like or what Stanford is like during the pandemic. So these are my contact info. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm pretty responsive there. And yeah, really excited for your questions. And thank you again to the organizers for having me.
Thank you so much for that awesome presentation. Your work has truly made an impact around the world, and it's incredibly impressive how much you've done at such a young age. So with that being said, we're going to move into the Q&A period. Unfortunately, it'll be a little bit shorter than we planned, but that's all right. We'll still try and get to as many questions as we can. So Sing-Son, do you want to share your screen quickly?
Sorry, wait, I'm just trying to like figure it out, sorry.
Okay. So yeah, so basically I'll ask the questions. Some of them are pretty general, some of them are specific to certain panelists, but anyone who wishes to answer can go ahead, and you guys can elaborate off of each other. Yeah, so yeah, I guess I can start off. I guess I can start off by asking the very first question, which is, what inspired you to pursue your field? Did you have any second thoughts? And any of you can feel free to answer.
Sure, yeah. So basically, I guess I definitely did have, like, I don't know. Then again, I'm still very early in my journey, so I'm not sure. I'm sure I will have, you know, like doubts and that kind of stuff later down the line, as everyone does. But definitely, I had an experience with a relative going through, you know, an aging-related disease, and it was incredibly, you know, heartbreaking to have him go through that. So it was sort of, and just being a family member as part of that, it was just, you know, it was a very sad experience. So yeah, that's what inspired me to, you know, do something about that, right? Because I didn't want anyone else to go through that, just from the family side, but also from the patient side, because it was a, you know, pretty unfortunate disease. But yeah, so there's a lot of times where, you know, I'm wondering, you know, I see other people and I'm like, oh, wow, they're doing so much, you know, like I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty normal to experience that. But I know that overall my motivation sort of lays in this field, and like I just want to do anything I can to help families who are going through those diseases and prevent more from having that happen.
Yeah, I don't mind going next. To answer the question directly, yes, I had a lot of doubts, specifically just because I struggle with my coursework in general. Being a pre-med at the university I was at was extremely rigorous, and there was always competition to get the opportunities to advance yourself towards becoming a physician, research, community service, internships, letters of recommendation, whatnot. So I did have doubts, and that's actually why I got my second degree, which is political science. Because I knew I wanted to go into some type of healthcare related work. And so I thought healthcare law might be the backup. But for me, and I encourage anyone who, you know, is kind of on the fence or having doubts, I really reconnected with why I wanted to go and become a physician by volunteering with patients specifically. And I realized that my role and my ultimate goal to, you know, increase patient access to healthcare and make healthcare more inclusive, it wouldn't be fulfilled in the same capacity if I was a lawyer versus becoming a physician. So ultimately, that's why I went back to becoming a physician.
Yeah, and just to follow up in terms of, you know, my personal roadmap, I guess, I was always into things like leadership and camps and all that kind of stuff growing up. It was always a passion of mine to, you know, when I was in grade 12, 11, helping out those students in grades 10 and 9, just figure out, you know, what they are passionate about, what they can get involved in, how they can be a part and really make their high school experience as beneficial and as rewarding as possible. And that kind of stuff just translated to my later years as well, when I was in university, during my master's, and now working as well. The mindset was always, what can I do to help that future generation? And I just remember myself going into university. I was that student that was afraid to ask questions. I was that student who, was nervous around professors, around teaching assistants, all that kind of stuff. And, I kind of made that decision that I want to be the person to help students not be afraid of that, to answer those questions, to put a face to the institution, and to let students realize, it's not as scary as you think it is. And there's people that, at the end of the day, dedicate their careers to help you succeed and help you along the way. And, for me, it really started at the age of, I guess, 13. And luckily, I'm lucky enough really to be able to do what I've been passionate about for a very long time. And again, hopefully help out students as best as I can.
Yeah, personally for me, I didn't just wake up one day and think, oh, I'm going to start a nonprofit. Like, it definitely was not that easy. I gave it a lot of thought. And I think that my story really started with, of course, WiTech as a blog, and then it turned into an organization. But the very core of the idea of WiTech was really just thinking about what bothered me about the gender gap in tech, really reading into a lot of articles, doing as much research as I could, to the point where I remember when I was like 14, 15, there would be some nights where I would just not be able to sleep because I was so intrigued by the problem and just wanted to learn more. And like, I felt like my brain was like working nonstop and thinking about solutions. So my advice to anybody that wants to go into the nonprofit field would be to think about a problem that you care about very, very deeply, like literally to the point where it keeps you up at night, and just channel your energy into coming up with a solution and collaborating with like-minded people and forming a community from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Those were some very insightful answers. So I'll move on to ask a question sent in by one of our attendees, specifically for Tiffany. So would you say that med school or like pre-med programs are really hard? And how did you balance your social life while studying?
The short answer is yes. I do think being a pre-med is hard. And I'll preface this by saying that I think every single career has its sacrifices, and I can't speak on all of them, obviously, because I've only exposed myself to both law and becoming a physician. But I can just say that from those two perspectives, all my political science friends had a much greater social life than I did, than when I was studying to become a physician. And even now, I'm currently studying for my MCAT, as all my friends are going out at the end of the day, going out for dinner. Well, not now because of COVID, but theoretically speaking, I come home from work and I sit down and I study for my MCAT basically until I go to sleep. So it is rigorous in that sense, and you do have to make sacrifices. How do I balance my social life? I think really good time management. I think I make it a priority. So for example, to make sure that I get to sit down with my family for dinner and that I have time to speak with my partner over the phone because we're long distance. I physically schedule out time in my Google Calendar for that, because if not, things will get away from you. It's the same thing with whatever you're doing, whether it's homework assignments, whether, it's, going on a road trip with your friends or going on a Zoom call or, making time for a hobby. Like if you schedule out the time for it, everything kind of all works out, and you ultimately find the time to fit everything else you need in a day. So I really press upon any of you, who are, wanting to become a physician or just go into any type of rigorous field to like go in with that sense of organization or learn to be organized. Because I myself am a terrible procrastinator. Like I still do it now. So, but it's constantly being a work in progress and organizing your schedule, and you'll find that balance in that way. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Awesome. Another one is specific for Nikola, sent by one of our attendees. What are the best / most popular majors in science and engineering for programs at the University of Toronto?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. When it comes to our engineering programs, the two, most popular ones for our incoming students, I wouldn't say most popular, but the ones we really get a lot of questions about and a lot of interest in is our engineering science program. So again, that engineering science program is that 2+2 year approach. The first 2 years are your foundation years, and then in your upper years, you also really focus in on a specific major. And then there's also that research component. And as I said, it's really academically rigorous. It's one of the few programs of its kind. And because it's so unique in the way that it's structured and in the opportunities available to students through that program. Engineering science is one of them. And then of course, Track 1 is also one of our really, really popular programs. And I think the reason for that, and just to refresh everyone's memory, Track 1 is the undeclared first year program, where again, you take very, very similar classes to anyone else in any of the core programs, but you have that additional seminar course that talks about all of the core programs, really sheds a bit more light and gives you a clearer picture on what they're doing, so that going into your second year, you can choose, have a better idea of what you want to go into and how you want to structure your future years. And I think the reason why that program is so popular is that, a lot of students, they know what they're passionate about, but they still don't know, at the age of 18, 19, what they want to dedicate their lives or their careers to. And so having that extra year to ask those questions, to really, get a better understanding of what engineering is, what roles are, what opportunities are available, what co-op options are available, all those little things really do, make a really big difference at the end of the day. And having that buffer year where you're still learning, you're still gaining that experience, but you still have the opportunity to choose what you want to go into in the next year is a huge positive for a lot of students. And I just want to reiterate that going from first year into second year, if you are in any of the core programs and are interested in potentially moving to a different one, those opportunities are available. Our student support team is there to help out, to see what might be the best fit for you. So it's just important to know, going into what you choose, that's very important, but don't think that it's the be all end all. You can't change your mind. You can't tweak your studies in any way. They are case by case situations, but they are available for all of our students as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that incredibly informative response. So another one, which is for all of our attendees, a big part of STEM is getting hands-on experience, and these are oftentimes pretty limited in quantity. Where can we find these or increase our chances of getting these types of opportunities?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate kind of from what the presentation, what I chatted about a little bit. Again, with U of T engineering specifically, with the application process, we do look at those extracurriculars. And it's important for students to remember that we're not looking at math and science extracurriculars. We're looking for any type of extracurricular, anything that you're passionate about. At the end of the day, anything that makes you, you. That's kind of what we want to hear and what we want to see. And so anything you're passionate about, whether it's, again, sports, clubs, competitions, part-time jobs, volunteer work, really, everyone has their own passions and what makes them unique. And so we want to hear that and we want to see that in your application. And then when it comes to, if you do become a U of T student, there's, as I mentioned, 75 specific engineering clubs and teams, both academic, social, athletic, whatever it might be, but also 800 clubs and teams across the university. So again, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're interested in, there should be a club for you. And if there isn't, you can also follow up with our team to get funding to create that club as well. So we just really try to make the opportunity for you to, have the best education and best university experience that you can, because at the end of the day, it's not our university experience, it's your university experience, and you should be able to customize it as best as possible.
That's awesome. Does anyone else have any thoughts on where you can find opportunities?
I was actually going to piggyback off of what Audrey said in her presentation. I think LinkedIn is a great tool. I think also I'm on Instagram, so I can speak from experience. I think Instagram is a great tool as well. You're going to shoot a lot of shots and you're going to miss. For example, for my research lab currently, I applied to 27. There were no responses. I re-emailed again, and I still only got one response, but that is the one response that I got, and now why I'm still working, at my research lab. Same thing with my medical assistant job. I actually connected with a physician through Instagram. We were chatting a lot, and the physician ended up mentioning that she had a family friend who was looking to hire a student. I just happened to live in the same area, and that is what got me the job. So ultimately, building those organic connections, just wanting to learn and connect with people, whether it's through social media, whether it's through LinkedIn, Facebook, or even through one of these panels. I actually have a couple of panel attendees from one of my previous panels who reached out to me, and I helped connect them with volunteering experience as a pre-med. So connect in that way, and just make sure that you just shoot your shot ultimately, because you never know who's going to say yes to you. So if I was going to give any tip about reaching out to people, just be brief, polite, and direct. And that's pretty much all you need to know about how to reach out to people.
just building on that, like I think your point about connections is really, really a great point, because reaching out to people in the field you want to go into, reaching out to people in that area, or people at organizations you might want to work for. I mean, it can happen like super miraculously. I know one of my internships was just because I tweeted, I wrote a tweet and I was like, oh, hey, is anyone working on anything cool? And, would I be able to intern there, or would you work with that? And basically someone reached out to me, and they were, working on, actually it was during COVID. So they worked on, remote COVID monitoring, and also, for dialysis and tracking, working with sort of kidneys and monitoring of dialysis patients. So, I mean, they just reached out to me, and I just ended up, working with them because of that, which was so weird to me, so miraculous sometimes. So yeah, try to get those connections in those fields, because that'll really facilitate that, that overall. And also, just kind of coming from a perspective of like getting your ideas off the ground. If you were interested in that, I think, I reached out to, again, 100 labs, and I've counted 100 labs, and, 10 got back to me, 1 said yes. So it literally takes 1 person to say yes to actually kickstart stuff. So just put yourself out there, really.
Yeah, and I just like to add really quick as well, like really great tips so far from my fellow panelists. But I think just be smart about how you use social media. At first glance, like Instagram might not be like the best like networking tool, but in my experience at WiTech, it's what has given us the type of growth that we have. It's been so essential in our chapter expansion program. And I like to think that it's because we maintain an active social media presence, but also personally, I share tidbits about my story and about what it's like, or what it was like doing high school classes, applying to college, and running a nonprofit, and just being very like personal about that. And I started to see that the more personal I was with my posts, I was getting a lot of messages from people that were interested in working with us at WiTech, or just learning more about like the nonprofit scene. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but at the end of the day, like as my fellow panelists said, like at the end of the day, you're the only person that can really control like what opportunities like you go for. And if you do decide to go for it and it doesn't work out, well, you'll just thank you next, I guess. But if it does work out, then it can turn into something really great. My first speaking engagement for WiTech was in front of 4,000 people at an entrepreneurship conference. And that came out because I asked the question at a panel that I was watching. So that was a really crazy opportunity. So never underestimate like the power of asking questions, connecting with people, and just putting yourself out there.
Yeah, that's all really great advice on how to network with people and ask and build connections in your field. So just building off of that previous question, what tips do you have for other people who aspire to work in STEM?
Yeah, I mean, I guess generally, like, yeah, tips for people who want to go into STEM. I mean, it's just yeah, I'm assuming it's just general tips, like it sort of rules of thumb. Yeah, I mean, it's never too early to get started, really. I mean, there's so many people. I mean, people start like various times in their lives, and that's all. It's all so great. But if you know what you want to do, then there's no point in like waiting. Just sort of get started. Even like just reading about your field. Audrey said she was like reading a lot in middle school and high school about how to code, and just like the things like that, reading research papers, if you're interested in biology, that or some sort of science, like that's always so useful, just like learning. And you might get an idea because of that, or you might say, hey, I really like this paper, maybe I'll email the author, and that might lead to something. You never know. So, and also it's just really useful to learn early.
Yeah, that was great. Would anyone like to elaborate?
Yeah, I would say specifically for anyone who wants to become a physician, reach out to your doctor, like your primary care doctor, see if they're willing to refer. A lot of primary care doctors, depending on who you go to, may not want to see you because you're a patient. It's a little bit, it might cross that boundary of professional patient relationship. But I'm sure most of the providers that I've reached out to personally that I know have been willing to refer me to their friends, and that doesn't cross that boundary. So definitely do reach out to those who you physically come in contact with. You already have that made connection because you are a patient. And so don't be afraid to ask them. I think if anything beyond that, also being a pre-med, I would say that find some sort of clinical experience. So basically that essentially means being hands-on with a patient, and a patient can mean a lot of things. A patient could mean like, you're mentoring kids at a like at an after school program, or you're sitting down, doing Zoom calls, teaching elderly people how to work Zoom or how to work their remote controls and stuff like that. Those are different aspects that give you that human connection that are part of clinical experience that, I lost my train of thought further, but basically what I was trying to say is because of COVID, a lot of us cannot physically go into hospitals and clinics and stuff, and we cannot be physically with patients. And so having those other types of opportunities that give you that same type of human interaction are really important because they give you the motivation to continue studying. So do that, as well as also just ask your primary care provider when the time comes, given your province or country, and hopefully soon enough as COVID restrictions start to lift, we can all return back to the normal networking tropes that we use.
Yeah, and then also just like to add real quick as well, kind of a broad tip, but just realize how exciting it is that you can look anything up and basically find a tutorial for it. Like, it's crazy. Like, I got my introduction to CS by literally Googling how to learn how to code. And I was overwhelmed by the sheer amount of resources I could find online. So think of it as not like, oh wow, it's so scary like going into this field, but change that mindset into, isn't it so cool how I have so many resources accessible to me because of the internet, and start from there.
Yeah, and just to close off exactly that, what Audrey just mentioned and what Nina and Tiffany mentioned, we live in a really, really unique time in the universe where technology has never been as advanced as it is today. It'll probably be more advanced tomorrow, and then by Sunday, it'll be even more advanced than it was today as well. And so, again, those resources are out there. There's so many tutorials, websites, videos, tons of things that are, if you think you might be passionate about, there's ways for you to find out if you are through the internet, through searching it. And as Tiffany mentioned, ask those questions, keep reaching out, and just show that you care and show that you're passionate, because it really does go a long way at the end of the day to the people you're interacting with, for them to see that you have that passion, that dedication, and that commitment to whatever you're potentially interested in at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Yeah, all of you had some really great tips. Moving on, we'll try and get to a couple more questions before our raffle draw. So this one was sent in for Tiffany. So do you need to take all science courses in high school to apply for medical school and university?
I wish, I can't speak specifically for Canadian programs, but I'll speak on behalf of United States programs and at least international programs that are accepting in the United States. So specifically those in the Caribbean, so in Grenada and such, as well as in the UK. I know this also applies. No, you don't have to take high school difficult STEM classes, calculus, physics, or such. Those classes ultimately do help you get into the major, perhaps, of the college if you want to get into. But generally speaking, no, you do not have to take super rigorous STEM classes in high school to get into those programs, with one exception. So the exception, and I think maybe Nikola can expand upon this for his program, because I know he mentioned it. If you're going to a specialized program, I know here in the United States, we have a lot of dual BS and MD programs, which basically means you have 2 years of your prerequisites for medical school, and then you jump right, or excuse me, it's a 5-year program. So 2 years of your prerequisites for medical school, and then you spend 3 years taking medical school alongside other medical students. Those type of programs are very rigorous and competitive. They only usually choose like 10 students out of the how many thousands that apply. So in those cases, if you know that you want to become a physician, and this is like the path for you, if you're going to apply for those programs, then yes, I would recommend that you take difficult science courses, because they show that you're able to, meet that rigor of medical school. Because basically, once you get into these programs, it's very linear, and that you have no choice but to continue, or you need to find another career path. Yes, for specific programs, but no, if you're just trying to get into a general college.
Okay, awesome. We'll ask a couple more questions. Which has been more valuable in your career, your education or your experience? Why is that?
That's a really, really good question. I just want to preface with the notion that I think through my education, I've been able to get that experience. At least, again, that's my personal experiences with that. Through my studies, I learned those really important interpersonal skills that have set me up to succeed in, my profession. So, those soft skills, working with people, interacting with others, using those critical thinking approaches, analyzing data in different ways, working with charts, with graphs, with all those different aspects have, at the end of the day, really helped me out. One, figure out what I want to do, and two, help me succeed at what I do. I think the connections I've made, really all of my connections and all the people I've gotten to know and my path that's led me to where I am today, I've met those through university, through school, and through the contacts I've made during my studies. And so for me personally, I know everyone has their own experiences, but it's a 50-50 split at the end of the day. You gain so much from both aspects, and you splice those together to make, again, who you are and then the opportunities you have as well.
I mean, I think that I can't really speak to it super in depth because I've only done high school. I'm only partly done high school, so I'm not really sure if I can say that much. But I'm sure I'll have a different answer after university. But I can say this at least. I know that I've had things. I really want to say my experience. I know my experience has really helped me and shaped me into the person I am today because I just learned a lot from hands-on, and that's just me because it's a personal thing. How do you learn best? But at the same time, I've had so many supportive teachers and teachers who have helped me along my journey, within high school and within, sometimes even middle school, right? And it's sort of, I don't know, I feel like that's also something that's really helpful. So I think it would be a 50-50 split for me because, I just, the support I get from education is just insane. Yeah.
And kind of to just jump on Nina's part as well, I think I'm also very limited in the advice I can give, only a freshman in college, but I can say that I have been loving my classes. And I think that given the experience I've had with WiTech, I've been able to appreciate it just a little bit extra in the sense that I'm taking this class called Symbolic Systems, Minds and Machines, and we're talking about the ethics of artificial intelligence. And a part of me can kind of bridge those concepts and think about oh, okay, here are the ethical implications. This is what we should integrate into our workshops about AI at WiTech. This is a perspective we should bring, or perhaps a speaker or a theory or a topic that we could introduce to our students. And overall, I just think that it's always going to be a balance. And I mean, it's something that my parents talked to me about because they wanted to make sure that I was still going to go to college. And I was like, of course I still want to go to college. Of course I'm not going to say no to Stanford. But at the end of the day, I think that having both in my life, a nonprofit and an education, has been able to help me strike a balance between learning and being very proactive about learning about the world around me and learning about how to also give back and apply the things I'm learning in the classroom to outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I'm actually going to deviate just a little bit from my other panelists just because my partner actually is someone who went to community college. So I'll say this, I do think where you go to where you get your education does matter because ultimately education buys you access. And so if you are someone who is going to perhaps a university with not great access, like perhaps a community college, and many people go to community college for different reasons, whether it's lack of finances, you're not able to afford college, that's perfectly okay. I will say though, if you're in one of those positions, that in those cases, putting yourself out there and asking for those experiences, I think in that sense does make more of an impact than your education. And again, I think all of us, we speak from a standpoint that we all went to, or beyond Nina, but the rest of us have all gone to a 4-year university. So, we speak from a different level of privilege. And I know a lot of people may not have that access to that. So if you are someone who, is not able to go to a 4-year university, regardless of it's your grades, your finances, whatever life circumstances, just remember that your circumstance doesn't necessarily have to define you. Oftentimes it is your experiences, but just know that the two and two kind of do play hand in hand when it comes to access. So if you are someone with less access, just make sure to put yourself out there more and really go for those experiences until you can get that access and get that higher education.
Awesome. And just to end things off, for everyone, if you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring STEM student, what would it be?
Go ahead, Tiffany, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the piece of advice I give to every single student I ever meet is that your failure does not define you. I feel like in the world of STEM, our GPAs and our grades and how many rejections we get or whether we get accepted or publications is so like coveted. It's like the thing that like when you ask someone like, oh, introduce yourself, they're like, my name is Tiffany and I have a 4.0. It's kind of like in your face in that aspect. So I always tell students, because of the fact that struggles are not always on display, that if you are struggling, if you are failing, it's not final and it doesn't define you. You can still come back and become just as successful as the next person. Just put in that little extra bit of effort and seek help. So don't be deterred just because you hit a rough patch in your journey.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely echo that as well. For me, just because I work with students literally every day, my big thing that I always preface is ask questions. If you're in grade 11, grade 12, you're gonna have so many different things thrown your way in the next few months with making decisions where you want to go, what you want to do. And at the end of the day, you should be making that decision for yourself, and you should be making that decision for what fits you best. Students always say, should I come to Toronto because it's the best city I've heard in Canada? And for me, the response is the best city is what city you think you would succeed in. Do you like urban? Do you like rural? Do you like big city, small city? All those little things that go along with the college or university experience, other than just, classes and lectures and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of, I take that holistic approach where there's so many different aspects associated with going to and completing your higher education that you need to think about and you should think about, because you'll be spending 4+ years of your life there. And so my big thing is ask those questions, get that clarification, and never feel like you're annoying someone by asking those questions. As I mentioned, and I think all my panelists probably agree with me, we're here for a reason. We're here to answer your questions tonight and to talk about our experiences. And, I think anyone who works in a university, college, or who works, in non-for-profit or whatever it might be, they care about what they do and they love talking about what they do as well. And so ask those questions, get that clarification, and just to help you make the best decision that's for you. And then, as Tiffany mentioned, if there's a failure along the way, learn from it, use it, but don't let it define you.
Something I'd always recommend is just do it. I don't know. Something that, I don't know. It's something that's been really valuable to me in my just, my limited, but like, my years of sort of looking into, different aging and looking into science in general. It's just that, like, a lot of the time I overthink things, and I'm sure many of you guys do too. It's I'm like a massive overthinker, but many other people are as well. And, I'm always like, well, what are the ramifications with doing this, or how will they respond to my reach out, that kind of stuff. And honestly, in times of doubt, unless it's like some serious decision, like applying for college, or like going to college or something like that, like most times when it's just something small, like just do it. Don't overthink it, because the smallest things and like the smallest little actions, and it can get you big results. And if you fail, you learn from it. Like as Tiffany said, you are not defined by your failures, and you learn from them. You're going to learn from them every time. So I just recommend just do it. Like I've definitely had those moments, but yeah.
My advice overall would be to don't fall into the culture of comparison that I think exists a lot, like especially very much for like Gen Z. And I say this because, fresh out of high school, I feel like, especially with like the college admissions process, there is this tendency naturally for a lot of students to compare achievements, grades, how fun of a time everyone's having, that sort of thing. And I recommend that you just don't care so much about what other people think, which I know is easier said than done. Surround yourself with people that have the same morals and like care about the same causes as you do. I found a lot of my community in high school, or like during my time in high school, like outside of my high school, and through WiTech, and through finding people that also care about like the gender gap and accessibility and technology. Beware of social media. Like I know we were just talking about how great of a tool it is to network and create different projects, but at the same time, like be very deliberate about who you follow and what content you consume. And at the end of the day, know that whatever you see on social media is really just what people want you to see. You're not going to see the struggles that lay beneath. You're not going to see like the different hardships that people face in order to get to the specific goal they wanted to get to. And at the end of the day, know that nobody's journey is really perfect. Like that's something that I really stress, especially in terms of like WiTech. There were a lot of nights wherein like during senior year when I was applying to colleges, I was finishing up the international baccalaureate program, I was running WiTech full time. Like I would cry because of sleep deprivation. Like I had a favorite bathroom cubicle in my high school to cry in because I was just so tired. And I don't think we talk about like moments like that, low lights enough like that when we talk about like teenagers starting like companies or nonprofits, for instance. So know that not everything is like shiny and exciting all the time, but when you find something that you care about, like dive into it. Don't care about people saying that it's like uncool, or like don't care about what other people think, because at the end of the day, it's always going to be about what you think of yourself and what the people that you're trying to impact feel about your project.
Yeah, that's all really awesome. All of you made some really amazing points, and I'm sure everyone was able to take away something valuable from your presentations. So thank you so much for presenting. We will now, as we're moving towards the conclusion of our event, we will now be announcing the winner of our raffle draw, so I'll pass it off to Sing Song.
Yeah, so we drew the, so we did the raffle draw, and Yolanda is the winner of our of the ND consultant session. So Yolanda, if you're here, we're just gonna be emailing you after the event about how to like redeem your prize. So yeah, congrats. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing your experience. That was really valuable, and I'm sure like everyone learned a lot. Thank you so much. If you guys want to join us again soon, this is our Instagram, link to our Discord server, and our email and WeChat updates group. So if you guys want to do that. And yeah, once again, thank you so much to all the speakers for coming, and also thanks to all of you guys for joining us. And yeah, please follow everyone, all the speakers on Instagram. They put it in the chat. Yeah, so thank you so much. We hope to see you guys at another event soon. Thank you.